And we have kind of a larger group tonight, so this is kind of exciting, and we have some new board members. And so let's take a little bit more time this round to do introductions. And Jessica Hembry will be joining us shortly. I believe she is on carpool pickup for her kiddos, and the rain is slowing them down, so she will be here shortly. So I'm going to start us off, and so if you can share your name, but also a little bit about your role, whether you're with the district or new committee members, what area you're representing, would be great. So I'll kick us off. I'm Mary Sinclair. I serve as the president of the school board, and I believe I'm in my 7th year, something around those, in my 2nd term. I'll go over here to David Stubblefield, Dr. Stubblefield.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Stubblefield. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Leadership and Learning, and I will transition into the Deputy Superintendent role for next school year. I'm trying to do my best to fill in for this guy next to me. So.
I'm sure you will. Joe Gilhouse, Deputy Superintendent, and I'll be retiring at the end of June.
I am Tyler Clubb, Director of Facilities.
Russell Knapp, I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I'm in my 25th year with the district.
David Sims, I represent the North. Garcia appointed me, and 2 girls in the district, one at Crestview, one is at Awkward Road, who will be at North next year. And I work as an aide at pre-K.
Great.
And Susan Lindahl, this is my 2nd term. I'm a retired CFO, have 2 children who went through the district, and now have 2 grandchildren in the district. So it's really wonderful to be able to serve on board.
I'm Angela Ganser, and I'm representing the Northwest area. I have 2 kids in the district. Luke is in 6th grade at Crystal Cove, and Noah is in 8th grade at Trail Ridge. We're excited to have middle school and high school next year and getting out of the elementary school phase. So I'm excited to be here and happy to work with all of you.
Hi, I'm Angelique Rodriguez-Gunyon. I represent Shawnee Mission West. I have 1 graduated from the district, 6 in the district, and a grandchild in the district from my older brother. Yeah.
My name is Melissa Rooker. I am the East Area representative on this committee. Shawnee Mission graduate myself, married to a graduate, 2 children who graduated, and a 3-term former lawmaker in the Kansas House, and current director of the Kansas Children's Cabinet.
My name is Mike Schumacher. I currently serve as the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources. Forgot my job. Got enough right now. Next year I'll be taking over for this wonderful person as our superintendent, and thanks to our community members for serving on the board.
My name is Michelle Hubbard. I'm currently the superintendent, and I'm glad you guys are here.
My name is Shelley Trenum, and I'm the clerk of the board, and I'm also the assistant to Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Gilhouse, soon to be the assistant to Dr. Schumacher and Dr. Stubblefield. And just a little point for the meeting, make sure you turn on your microphones when you're speaking so that it comes over on the live stream.
Okay, thank you. So these meetings are meetings for us, but we hold them in the public. I do, because we have a fellow board member joining us, to just kind of listen in, I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. David Westfield is here with us. David, you want to say hello?
Hello.
I mean Westbrook, sorry.
So you can change my name.
She was thinking of Stubblefield.
Just right, combining. I'm sorry. Thank you, David, for being here. And Jessica should be here shortly. I should mention I also have, I'm an alumni of Shawnee Mission as well, and have 2 kids who graduated, and I have a daughter who bought a house in the Tomahawk neighborhood. So we'll see if I'll be a grandparent one of these days. No rush there. Okay, before we jump into the meat of the committee as well, again, because we have kind of newer membership, and I just want to take a minute to think about, or just kind of review a little bit about the purpose of this committee and how it became to be. And to acknowledge and just thank all of our administrators here. Typically, we don't have this many administrators here in this committee. I just wanted to make that, point that out as well. They are going through the transition, right, as we're going to have a new superintendent and a new deputy superintendent. So we have kind of double duty from our administrative team here today in their transition process to the new role, their new respective roles. All right, so thinking about this committee, this is a board committee that was established only a couple years ago, really. And the board is noted in policy. So there is a formal component to this. It's policy BBC. You can look and see how we structure committees. And it was a very intentional effort to create another way to have two-way communication between the board and our community around issues of our school budget and public finance, or our operational budget, our facilities budget, and how those are aligning with our strategic plan and the work of the district. I think it's important to remember or take a minute to think about what was happening contextually before we established this committee. It was, I was pulling up the website to see when our first meeting was. So you can find on our website, there is a link to the Finance and Facilities Committee, and it has all of our meetings and agendas dating back to our first meeting, which was, let's see, it was, is this our forward meetings? Sorry, why I'm struggling to pull that up. Oh, here we go, sorry. If I click on the right thing here, it'll come to me. Okay, so our first meeting was April of 2020, right in the heart of COVID. But prior to that, the board had established and talked about creating this committee 2000, I think even before 2018, 2019. And if you remember, we had been coming off of what was probably 5 or 6 years of chaotic finance in the state. So the state, for the 5 or 6 years prior to that, had a budget shortfall every year. And that budget shortfall between 2012 and 2017 or 2018 had a significant impact on our school district budget. Half of any state budget goes to public education. So that huge impact at the state and that budget crisis that was happening at the state level put this district and all districts across Kansas in a position of not knowing what the budget would be, not knowing how much, having to make cuts. And I'm sitting here looking at Mr. Knapp, who lived through these years and maybe has compartmentalized and blocked them out. I don't know, it's probably a little traumatic. But there was a lot of chaos around the budget, which makes communication even that much more challenging, right? If we don't know what's coming from the state, it's hard to plan as a district what's going to happen that current school year, let alone kind of several years into the future. So I think part of that might have created a lot of questions about how districts were spending their money. It was a very challenging time in making those cuts. So creating this Finance and Facilities Committee was in part having lived through the repercussions of those times. How do we put a group in place that can be more proactive about how we are spending our funds, how we're planning for the future? And hopefully we won't live through those kinds of times again from the state where that chaos makes our job even more challenging as a group and as a community. But that was, I think, a very intentional element of creating the Finance and Facilities Committee. So we're still kind of new, and we're, I think, evolving. And as this group identifies maybe some additional needs or tweaks that we can make to how we progress, I think that would be very welcome. I think I'll stop with that. I think I can talk about the history of school finance for way too long. So I guess the other part I just wanted to add to that is at the time, maybe in part because of all those funding shortfalls and just the chaos it was creating in districts, I'm not sure how much opportunity there was for districts to maintain all of those various committees that create those opportunities for two-way communication between community members, as well as at the superintendent level. I think around that same time, Dr. Hubbard started reestablishing a number of advisory committees that were, that would serve and support the administration and giving them feedback. So the board shifted to 2 meetings a month, again, to try to create those opportunities for more communication. And with that, more transparency. All right, so that kind of background, I think, is really important to keep in mind. What our mission is to try to keep that same level of communication and transparency moving forward, and kind of nip maybe some of those questions, concerns about the budget before they become big issues. All right, so our first agenda item is, or our third agenda item here is a presentation of the budget workshop timeline and non-operating budget expenditures. And so I believe I'm going to turn to Mr. Knapp to lead us that way. And this is part of what the board receives too, in terms of, I think you'll probably share that as well, kind of standard information that the board receives as part of the statutory budget workshop. Ms. Hembry, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, how are you?
Good. Everyone?
Middle school pickup.
Yeah. All right.
You want to introduce Jessica?
Yeah, can you, it's kind of a new group, so you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure,
Just say.
happy to. Lots of familiar faces. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Jessica Hembry. I'm new on Finance and Facilities Committee. This is my second term on the board. I represent the South area, and I have 3 kids in Shawnee Mission School, so I have a middle schooler and 2 elementary school kids at Trail.
Take it away.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So our budget is very large. It's about $485 million in total. And to a very high level, we break it down into operational budget versus non-operational. When we talk about operational budgets, we're talking about the daily operation to run the district, salary and benefits, student transportation, utilities, et cetera. Non-operational is your big projects like capital projects, maintaining buildings, building new buildings, et cetera. Those are our 2 big funds there, are the capital outlay funds and our bond funds, and we'll talk about that a little bit here in a few minutes. So this slide you've probably seen before. The ones that have been here since 2020 have seen this. We have $485 million, and we break it into these 5 different groups. There's a total of 37 separate funds that we have, and they're all state statute driven with their own revenue sources. So the first 2 there on the left are the operating funds and the federal funds. We'll cover that May 13th at our budget workshop at the board meeting at that time. Again, your operating funds are unrestricted, and that's what runs your day-to-day. So when you hear the discussion about school finance formula, general state aid, special education state aid, that's that fund. Federal funds are there to support all our programs that we do on a daily basis. So you have your Title I that support our higher poverty schools with additional support, and then you got Title 6B, which supports your special education programs. Those are our 2 large federal programs. And then more of the funds we'll talk about tonight are capital outlay funds and our bond funds. We have some flow-through funds and self-supported funds, and we'll cover those here in a minute. Our budget, next slide, Shelley. Thank you. Our budget development process starts in November, and we start that with a building needs assessment. So we reach out to each of our school buildings, the administrative staff. They work with their leadership team at their buildings, and they identify the needs that they need to run their buildings and to be more successful in the learning. Those are turned back into us in January. The board sees those. The leadership team reviews those. We pull things out that are common. We try to prioritize those, and those get built into the budget, things that are common across all our school buildings. And so that process begins in January. Our HR team each year does their staffing process, and it's based on the projected enrollment of the future year. They work on just the regular staffing at your elementary and your secondary levels, and then they pull out from the building needs assessment any staffing that's coming out of those asks from our buildings. That all gets incorporated in the budget, is presented to our leadership team, adjustments are made. Then we watch closely what's going on in Topeka. If you've been following it, we just got our K-12 budget approved Friday. It did have $75 million in special ed additional money. So we're waiting to hear from, at the state level, how that's going to be divvied out, and we'll see how much additional money we get at that time. I don't think we will know what that number will be May 13th. They have, KSDE takes that to their board, I think on May 14th, 15th at their board meeting. So we'll see what that number is.
Russ,
yes.
If you said this, I apologize, but if anyone wanted to look at our building needs assessment, they are all on the website.
I did not.
Every building.
And our board reviews all those, and they make board comments to those, and yes, they're all out on a link on our website.
Dr. Hubbard, could you maybe just at a really high level, what goes into a building needs assessment? So if I'm a principal and I'm gathering that information and sharing that with district leadership, what are they considering?
So we use a form that each building, it's a template that every building uses, but they'll look at all sorts of things. What is it that kids need to be successful? What do our state assessments look like? What do MAP assessments look like? What does absenteeism look like for the building? Are we a Title I school? If so, what are we using Title I funds for? ELL, there's a lot in the needs assessments this year around ELL because we have, while our number of ELL kids aren't changing, what is drastically changing is newcomers. So kids that are speaking absolutely no English is much higher than it has traditionally been for Shawnee Mission. And so we look at all those types of things and ask, what are the things that your building need? And we specifically tell principals, this is not a form that you're completing. This is a form that the building leadership team is completing. And we've come a long way with it. Really, this is our second year where I feel like we've been very comprehensive. And this year we actually, I know you'll be surprised to hear this, but as a superintendent, I often hear, I need, right? I need an assistant principal, I need counselors, we need this at our building. And so this year, I know people got tired of me hearing me say this, but I'm like, well, what does their building needs assessment say? What is it that the team said that they needed? And so we use those building needs assessments to build our budget. And it was really kind of cool. It was a fun process, I thought.
And so that's part of a statutory requirement when you say it's like in the second year. So the district has been operating on that kind of process, but
I meant like our process has been very specific the last 2 years in regards to having a form template and centralized all the data.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. So we're up to May now, and we'll present May 13th, and then I will present May 15th to the IBB negotiating team. Our budget is made up, about 83% of our total budget is made up of salary and benefits, so a lot of that cost will be determined on May 15th. If they reach an agreement, those numbers get worked into the budget as well, and then we'll present that in July to the Board of Education and go through the approval process.
And Russ, that's the interest-based bargaining. That's kind of the structure in which negotiations are done between the district and the teachers.
Yes. All right, Shawnee. A lot of the funds that are in your non-operating funds are supported by local taxes, okay? And the assessed valuation of the school district has a direct impact on that mill levy and the amount of local taxes that you can collect. Shawnee Mission School District is the largest assessed valuation in the state of Kansas, so we do benefit from that. A small mill levy increase can generate considerable tax dollars for us. Our initial estimate shows our assessed valuation up going 5%, and we'll be at $5.77 billion is what we're working on. This number's not finalized until next October, so we work off an estimate until that point. Next slide. This is a busy, didn't come across very well, but this is just to demonstrate how large our footprint is. We have 59 different sites that we have to insure. It's $1.8 billion of property insurance that we go out and market each year. So that takes a significant amount of financial resources and human resources. Tyler has a large staff on hand, electricians and plumbers and painters, et cetera, to take care of all those needs. And so the two funds that we use to handle all those significant maintenance is our capital outlay fund and our bond funds, and we'll cover those here in a minute. So the first one is the capital outlay fund. State law says you can go up to 8 mills. We are at 8 mills. We've always have levied that. There is a state aid component for that. We do not qualify for that. We never have, and we never will. So we generate about $45 million a year based off that 8 mil. You get a little property tax and motor vehicle tax. We will get one-time money in August for the sale of the old Westwood View Elementary School. We're selling in the city of Westwood for $2.65 million. So with all that all in, we think we'll have about $70.4 million available to us to handle our capital outlay needs. And then our expenditure slide. We anticipate having a budget of $65.4 million that we would take to the board for approval, and that would be our budget authority. And in the state of Kansas, you approve your budget authority, you can't spend more than that. That's how that works. When we go through that building needs assessment early in November and December, the buildings have the opportunity to order furniture and equipment for their programs at their buildings. So this would be PE equipment, it could be a sewing machine for the fashion design classroom. So that's where $2.2 million goes back out to our school buildings. Technology, $4 million. You can imagine technology equipment. A lot of it now, we can take software out of our capital outlay that was expanded a few years ago. So a lot of our large software purchases can come out of capital outlay. That totals about $4 million. Operation and maintenance, that $13.4 million is just to run the school district each year on a daily basis. So that's a lot of just your day-to-day maintenance costs to run your buildings, plus some cycle projects. So a cycle project would be re-asphalting a parking lot, maybe redoing a field turf, roofs, etc. That all comes out of that 13.4. Salary and benefits, those are our skilled tech positions. So those are your plumbers, electricians, HVAC guys. In addition, we committed a couple years ago to use custodial salaries to push over to capital outlay to pay for a strategy out of the current strategic plan. So secondary teachers could teach 5 out of 7 versus 6. So that was an added cost of adding teachers. So that's $4.5 million that we still commit to moving over to custodial. That's just shy of $10 million. Apple lease payment, that's our Apple devices. We have it on a refresh cycle, usually either 3 years or 4 years. And we get that financing through Apple at 0%, so you can't beat that. And so the lease payments for next year is just a little bit over $7 million, so that's scheduled out. That leaves us about unallocated projects at $28.6 million. That's a pretty good chunk of change, but that would go for any emergency needs. We will tap into it because you just can't get through a school year without some type of need. But you cross your fingers that you don't have to tap into that, because if you do, something bad happened, like 2 years ago, December 25th, when we had the deep freeze. We had 10 sites that had burst pipes that Tyler was jumping on. So that was over $1 million in repairs.
I would just note here that one of the most common questions that comes up is, why isn't the district using their capital outlay for X, and it's because these are uses that are defined in statute. So it's a state at the legislature's level that determines what's allowable for capital outlay, and you guys are squeezing everything you can possibly squeeze into this pool of funding.
Yeah, that's correct. So this would be a restricted fund, and statutes would obviously dictate what you can spend out of there.
I have a question too that relates to that. Are there technology salaries that could be also transferred into this along with the custodial?
I think it's the gray area. We do not.
I know some districts do.
Some districts do.
So that was my question. When you said squeezing every dollar, we're trying to find every dollar we can to, and I know you are, to do that. But I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, I would think the technology positions would be a few that take care of more of the infrastructure, the backbone, the wide area network, not the day-to-day tech analysts that go out and just kind of troubleshoot issues.
Can I add on to that, Susan, because I'm not sure what direction you were going with that, but is that, so board policy, and I think you might be getting to it, we do have a cap on how much, right, we can pay for salaries. And so are we short? Like, do we have, is there more like custodial or maintenance salary that's coming out of our general operating budget?
The board policy is 25% salaries compared to tax revenues.
Right. So in terms of squeezing, I think we probably wouldn't even have to go to tech to find more if we wanted to max out that 25% out of capital outlay, I guess is where I was going. We probably have.
My question.
Yeah, I think we have more maintenance and custodial still in our general operating budget.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, we would have custodial in our operating. The majority of, if not all of our maintenance.
Looking for every dollar we could redirect for classrooms.
Right. Good question.
So capital outlay, total budget 65 million. We always budget with a $5 million ending balance, and that is to handle our cash flow from July to December, because we get our big tax checks in May and January, so that handles our cash flow. Next slide.
Quick question.
Yes.
So on the 26 or 28 million, how much of that, do we typically bump into that every year? The unallocated projects, or are we usually have a fair amount of wiggle room every year?
I would think we probably get into there maybe for $1 million, $2 or $3 million. It really just what comes up during the year that is unforeseen, you don't know. And this 28 million is also something that you could budget for, you could plan for. So if you wanted to do something 3 years down the road, you can build that and build a new building or renovate a building. And you could use these monies to do that.
Russ, can you give them an example of how we've done that in the past?
Isn't this building?
This building is built out of capital outlay.
Yeah. So we built Shawnee Elementary when it was $15 million. Now an elementary building is $36 million. But when it was 15, we built Shawnee Elementary. We built this building. We started the Apple refresh, or our Apple one-to-one started with those monies. And we built a $5 million operation and maintenance building and sold the old one.
So basically, all of those projects, the district was able to do without going out for an extra bond question to the voters.
Well, we did a capital outlay bond for 5 years.
Right.
And that helped pay for this and the Apple, but yes. Shawnee, we started with the unallocated project, that money that was being built into the capital outlay fund to start the Shawnee project.
But that capital outlay funding is within the context of the 8 mills that the district levies. It isn't above and beyond that, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so just a little bit of that's probably for emergency, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But most of it seems like it's planned, and so you can accumulate it, for however long you want to accumulate, so there's probably some that's been accumulated, is it? Or was at least for a couple of the projects you just mentioned?
Yeah, if you don't use it, it'll accumulate, yes. All right, so the other fund that provides those resources for our needs is bond funds. And so to have bond funds, you have to take a vote of the community. 50% or greater has approved that. We did that in 2021. They approved $264.2 million. We divided it in half and issued the first half in 2021. We've completely spent all of that. That was $147 million. And so we're currently working on issuance 2, which was issued in 2023. Right now we're at about $146 million. That will grow a little bit as we earn some more interest. And that's what Tyler has to work with that he'll talk about. So that's where we're at in our bond projects. And when you issue bonds, you have to pay them off. So that's the bond and interest fund. That again is all local taxes. So $41 million is all raised locally. Our debt payment for 24-25 is $37.7 million. That's 1 principal payment and 2 interest payments. The balance might look like it's large at $38 million, but that has to be that large so that's at July 1st. It has to be that large at July 1st because you make your principal and first interest payment in October. And that's where that payment comes out of that $38 million. So that's kind of the capital outlay and the bond funds and then how you pay it back. So I'm going to move on to one more. Our debt retirement schedule. Sorry, I forgot about that one. Just gives you a graph of what our debt looks like. It goes out through 2044. When we sell bonds, they're usually 20-year payback. As you can see, those next 3 years are heavy, and then it's even payments going out from like 2028 on out. And we are at 7.434 on our mill levy. So just to give you a little historic, when we went out for our bond referendum in 21, we estimated our mill levy would go up to 8.142. And that was just some conservative estimates, what our assessed valuation was going to do, what our pricing of our debt was going to be when we marketed out on the market. Things came in better than what we estimated, and so we haven't had to increase that mill levy. We've been able to keep it at 7.434 through about 3 years now. And next year we anticipate it being flat again, and it would stay flat for a few more years unless we wanted to go out for an additional bond. All right, now we can get on the flow-through funds, and we'll go quickly through these. This is money that we receive, and then we turn around and just give right back to the state. That's why we call them flow-through. Cost of living is part of the school finance formula, so that does help our operating funds. It's just totally based on the value of a house here in Shawnee Mission versus the average home value in the state of Kansas, which means, all right, your cost of living is up here, so you're higher, so you get to go and do an additional tax to collect that money. We collect it here locally, and then we send it to the state, and we get it back in the form of general state aid. So that's why it's called flow-through funds. The state cap on that is 7%, but they changed the law last year to put that on cost of living, so that 7% will go up for 24-25. We haven't heard what that is. But we're not at that cap, so we're at 6.39%. So right now, so we were at 5. That was the cap, and we hit the cap 2 years ago. So now we're at 6.39. The cap is 7. The school districts that you could think about around us that are at that cap is Blue Valley immediately and DeSoto. Okay.
Russ, on the flow-through funds, is another way of thinking about that, it's basically local funds that the state counts as state aid? Is that another way of describing flow-through funds?
They give us the authority through the school finance formula, and then we're responsible for collecting that.
But when the state talks about how much they contribute to school funding, they count those flow-through dollars as well as the 20 mills that we generate, which is across the state about $750 million or something like that?
That's correct.
The 20 mills? Okay.
Yep.
Well, and I would just note the CAPERS flow-through is, it's from recent past history, and it literally touches the account and leaves the account in the same day.
Yes, and sometimes they try to take it before they give it to us. We just won't stand for that.
So basically, local contribution is a little bit bigger than actually is reflected, because the state counts a chunk of local money as state aid when we think about state funding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. So, all right, so we got a handful of what we call self-supported funds, and we call those self-supported because the revenue source supports the expenditures for those funds without transferring any money from our operating funds. That was true for all these funds. It's no longer true for the Instructional Resource Fund, which I'll touch on here in a second. But you can see we have a few of those. They're either a local tax or student fees that provide the revenue for those funds. As one example is the food service, so that obviously is our breakfast and lunch program. It's self-supported, which is very good. It has a nice healthy balance, so that's that. So our Instructional Resource Fund, that fund has been a struggle for us in the past few years. The model for providing instructional resource materials has changed from the old hard textbooks that we had to online subscriptions to instructional resource material. They became very expensive, and they became a finite term. So when the 6 years up, they cut you off. So you're renewing those at a pretty expensive. So we're in when we do a ELA adoption, we might be doing $3 to $4 million to buy those subscriptions for 6 years. And then when that 6 years up, we got to pony up another $4 million. And so it's just cycles and cycles. And so our instructional resource team, they have a refresh cycle that goes out almost 10 years. Obviously, those are estimates, and we refresh those. And so a couple years ago, we went to the board and says, hey, we need to bring back the elementary instructional resource fee, and we did at $60. And then we have the $100 at the secondary level. But that just generates less than it's about $1.8 million a year. We can spend $5 million a year on in our instructional resource cycle. So we had to start transferring money from the operating funds. And we were fortunate that one of the things that came out of the pandemic was a lot of fallout from budgets where we couldn't hire positions. That was money saved, and et cetera. But that built up a little extra available money in our operating funds that we could transfer over there. And we used 4 years in a row there that we transfer money, because we knew that long term we needed this for 5-6 years. That we knew the instructional resource fee wasn't going to cover the refresh cycle. So this graph is just trying to show you the green are the transfer in, the blues are the expenditures, and the line graph is the fund balance. So as we look out 5 to 6 years from now, we will be using that fund balance up, and eventually we will, get where the point that it's just not enough there again. So the good news is we have 6 years to plan for this and make budget adjustments to account for that.
Let me get clarification on, all right, so that's what the student fees are going for. So if the back up one page, that's where we've got the 10 million roughly balanced.
Right here?
Is that correct?
Is that where you're at?
Yeah, or the page before.
The instructional resource line.
Yeah, correct. That's what you're essentially talking about?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
Yep.
so we received 4 million, we've expended about 5 million, and then, so that's what you anticipate over the next 4 or 5 years, that essentially that 10 million will be down to maybe zero, but.
Under 2 million, yes. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then that's when you'll just, put additional fees at that point in time? Is that what you're thinking? Or?
Well, you could still do, if you had the available balance in your operating funds to transfer, you might take advantage of that. You could tweak the actual refresh cycle. They continue to reevaluate that plan on what they're going to purchase. So these are estimates. We'll see what those estimates looks like as you get closer each year.
Yeah. Now, are on all the instructional stuff, is that all paid for by either the student fees or essentially coming from Shawnee Mission, right? Or my understanding, the PTAs sometimes fund some of this, is that correct? Is
No,
that-
anything the PTAs would fund would be above and beyond what the
Okay.
district provides.
right.
Now, you might be thinking, like, for example, the one I can think of right off the top of my head, Belinder Elementary PTA pays for a program called Leader in Me.
Okay.
Or,
So why do they pay for that? Is that something that the school district has told them to use? Is that something that they've just decided to do from the principal or
Yes.
or some of the teachers, or how does that work?
those are building decisions.
Okay.
So if it's part of our scope and sequence, it's part of our instructional plan, if you will, we pay for that. The district pays for all of that.
Okay.
So anything that a PTA is paying for is something the building wants specifically.
Often it's parent-driven, and they go to their administration to see if they can
And
add.
I could be wrong. I know my wife was the PTA president one time, and she always like, why are we paying for something that seems to be mandated by the district, is what her understanding was. So that was all somebody at the leadership.
It's something they wanted as a building.
Okay.
And the bulk of of instructional resources come out of the general operating budget, right? So the fees are just a portion just a small fraction of offsetting those costs.
Correct.
But why would a district use like the Leader? I don't know anything about Leader in Me, so I don't know. Is that something that you just threw that one out?
It's a leadership program for kids, and it's actually a great program. It's really expensive. Like,
Okay.
we couldn't afford, I suppose we could if it were our priority, but it would be really expensive to put in every elementary school, and it's just something they chose to do.
Okay, thank you.
We have a couple, actually, your elementary school's implementing it next year, and ESSER dollars purchased it for them for the next year.
The federal fund.
Or Title I funds
I
purchase it for some buildings. But those are building specific. We have buildings that use BIST, which is a behavior intervention program, right? But those are building decisions.
And if I can say, as for PTA, at least from a perspective, since I sit on the state board for the PTA, when it comes to different programs and curriculums and things like that, we know as a PTA, one, we're not able to fund because all the districts have their own curriculum, what they're doing, what they're planning and things laid out. But for PTAs, as building specific, as like, and when we have our meetings, let's say groups like, let's look at this, how does that work? And it generally fits just for that school. And they raise that money and they talk a lot with the principals and the teachers. A lot of it, I would say, from personal experience, might actually come from teacher feedback, because they do a lot of the surveys through the schools and what they're looking for. And I personally asked, what do you guys see out there? Because I don't know all of the technology and education, and sometimes these get recommended, and then there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And some schools are able or affluent enough to raise those funds, and then there's some of the schools that, like my school is a Title I school, where we're trying to raise other things within the community for those programs.
I would also add, I think the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation also makes grants to specific projects teachers apply for, others related. So that is, again, another little compartmentalized, very localized set of decisions.
Okay. So this graph just gives you a little historic perspective of our mill levy. We have consistently been around the 50 mill levy amount. We think we're going to increase slightly to 51.137. But there is, I've lost track of the tax bill at the state level, but it did have 20 mills going down to 19.5, so that would reduce the mill levy by 0.5.
Currently, the first $40,000 worth of home value is exempt. Like you, I've lost track of what's in the current package going to the governor.
It was going to go to 100,000.
There was one version that was 125,000. I think 100,000 is the new limit, but don't get too excited.
We'll wait and see. Yeah.
Are you predicting another veto?
Then, this slide, we like to compare between us and the 8 surrounding school districts. We're the second lowest at 50.822, and that goes to that being the largest assessed valuation in the state that gives us the ability to be that low. And then that also reflects on our bond and interest that we're AAA rated. That's the highest you can be. We love to maintain that. That means you're issuing your debt at the lowest rate. And your bond and interest levy can be lower than your neighbor. So we can always pat ourselves on the back for that. And then my last slide, the budget timeline. This is the approval process that is heavily statute driven. And so the workshops are just internal. We'll do one May 13th. And then we flip over to the statutes driven that we have to do to get board approval. You got the revenue neutral rate that will start June 24th. We're required to publish it in the newspaper at the end of July. Way to have a notice of hearing for the revenue neutral rate and the budget. And we'll do that scheduled for August 26th. And then we approve the budget and we have to submit that to the county and the state. And so that concludes my slides. And if you got any more questions, fire away.
The newspaper has to be a print,
It does
right?
have to be
Cannot be an
print.
online, so it has to be a print media
We-
source. Can
We
we
can't
go?
get with 2020.
No. Can we go back to slide number 3, I think it is? The definition of operational and non-operational, something. Slide 4, 3 or 4? 5. There we go, thanks. So from a perspective of thinking about this group and how do we communicate and common understanding of school budgets and kind of that notion of transparency and how and why we're using funds. I just kind of raised this as a question. To me, this seems to be, of this whole slide deck, this is really when it comes down to a broader community conversation. What is operational budget and what is non-operational budget? You can build this great building, but you can't pay enough to hire classified staff. Why is that? So I think it's this kind of, these two pots of funds where there's kind of an initial source of confusion or frustration. And the, ideas about how we can continue to communicate that and help our patrons understand the difference between the two, I think is something that I'd ask all of us to kind of keep in mind. But this is something that I know Russ hits every time he talks about budgets and kind of differentiating, beginning with there are two pots of funds. That's great. Yeah.
Russ, can you just, since we're on this, can you tell us of the operational fund budget, what percentage of that is your salaries?
Well, we always say salary and benefits is at about 83%.
I think that's super important to absorb.
We're labor intensive, obviously.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions? I do like how you're just kind of asking questions as we go. That's it's intended to be conversational, so please continue to do that. Can we spend a minute on board policy DBB? Do we have a link to that in the agenda? No? Okay. Okay. Okay, no, that's okay. So the board, I think we approved that maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, board policy.
2020.
2020,
December of 2020.
we approved board policy. And I think that's another component of maintaining our AAA bond rating and being of sound financial status. It really gives us those guardrails to maximize our flexibility. So as Dr. Lindell was pointing out, we can put up to 25%, that's our own cap, of those salary, the maintenance and custodial salary in the capital outlay budget, right? So that gives us greater flexibility in our operating budget, but we also are going to make sure we preserve enough to do and keep our facilities in good running order. So there's that cap at 25%, and then we also have kind of a minimum threshold for our operating budget of how low we will spend down, so that we always, again, have that 1 month at least, or 2 months of
Yeah, we try to shoot for 2 months.
2 months of pay. So that, I think, is a really important feature coming out of, again, the chaos of the state for those years. I mean, we forget about it, but it really did have major impact on districts. And so that really, I think, keeps Shawnee Mission in a really good space.
Well, and you mentioned the 2012 to 2017-18 period, but I would actually go back to the early 2000s. We were already engaged in legal action for underfunding schools when the Great Recession hit in 2008. And I think my kids were in the district that 2008-2009 school year, and the state cut the budget throughout the school year with all the contracts in place. I think there were 5 rounds of budget cuts during the school year where it just sent the district reeling. And that period, that is the year you can date back to when a lot of the cuts that we are still today recovering from as a district were made. Staffing reductions and a whole host of changes made to the approach to things. You all got the staff back to a 5-period schedule. The 6 sections began in that recession era window, if I recall. So it takes, the cuts happen quickly. It can take, it's been 10 years or more to recover.
Any other questions about the budget portion of the agenda? Okay. All right. Let's shift to the facilities.
Okay.
Dr. Gilhouse and Mr. Clubb.
So this is our bond timeline project. You'll see that it is over a 5-year period. The bond did pass, I believe Russ mentioned it earlier, which would have been in January of 2021, and we were out of the chute in February of 2021 with design and getting with discussions underway to start. If you see that 5-year time period there, you'll see the red vertical line there, about 2/3 of the way over, and it kind of shows you exactly where we are on that. So it's really difficult to see. We have this on posters and bigger, obviously, paper, but there has not one single day that passes where Tyler and I are not talking about the bond, whether it's weather, projects, timelines, upcoming bids, personnel, challenge here, challenge there. That's going great. But between the bond and capital outlay, he and I'm sure he's sick of probably seeing me come in the door. But we talk an awful lot, and he's been great to work with. So when you look at this, you'll see where the red line is again, which is where we currently are, and you'll see that we currently are in the process of 2 elementary schools that are being built. Rushton Elementary is about probably 70 to 80% complete. It will open in August. You can go back if you will, because I'm going to have Tyler talk about each one of these. It will be ready to open in August of 2024. We're currently underway with Tomahawk Elementary as well, and we have 2 large projects that are set to start in June this summer, June 2024, and that will be Shawnee Mission West and Indian Hills. Will also have some renderings of those coming up very quickly. We continue with our equipment cycle, our classroom sets, our furniture and so forth. Those continue to go out throughout the bond, but we feel like we're in a good shape, and you'll see the bond these projects will actually continue, especially lower on in that Gantt chart, through February of 2026. So we still have some times and a lot of loose ends, and financially we're in a good place. We just met with Russell and his team on Monday morning and feel like we're in a great place, even though the challenges we went through with the rising prices, costs, personnel, supply chain, and everything that we went through during COVID, and especially with 30 to 40% price hikes. So we had to be extremely good stewards and watch every penny, and it's been a challenge. So Tyler?
Okay.
Tyler, before you jump in, I was going to say, if you ever tune in to a school board meeting, which I'm sure you do on Monday nights, because that is just super exciting. If you kind of hear, or if you read through the agenda or you listen, any kind of expenditure that we're approving, there's a description of where that's coming out of the budget. So it'll say if it's coming out of the bond or if it's coming out of capital outlay. So all of the budget, yeah, I mean, so budget is something that we're always constantly working with as a board, and it typically comes from recommendations from the district. We have this approval process, you can see we're working now for next year's budget. And so all those approvals really are things that have already been thought through and planned. Approval at the board level has already been planned through, prior work.
And I would
So the-
also add that everything, all of the pictures, this Gantt chart, everything is on the district website, so you can see that. And every single Friday, we send a Friday note update to the Board of Education with all of our projects, bond, capital outlay, everything we're doing every single week goes to the Board of Education.
All right. Any questions or anything before Tyler jumps in?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Rushton Elementary. So just to recap, but reminder, this is IDS, or an Insight Design Studio, was the architect. Jay Dunn is our construction manager. 72,000 square foot elementary. Those students we are building on site, so those students are currently at the old Westwood View building as we rebuild Rushton on site where it's at. So it is opening, will be completed this summer, and they'll start the school year next year at it. Hang on, go back one more time, so I'll talk about it. I'll try to match it up, but in these renderings that they provided, so there's the front of the building, here's the media center photo, and then later on, we'll look back to it, but this is the main staircase, the learning stairs in the new build. So with the up-to-date construction photos on the next slide.
Is
Yep.
this the same architect as FEMA?
It is. It is.
Similarities.
Yes, it is. Yep.
You'll see a lot of similarities.
So there's the media center. That's the exterior view out in the courtyard looking back into the media center. And then there's the front view of the main entrance, sidewalks. The sidewalks are going in as we speak. Well, they should be. Not much work outside this week. But, and then some interior progress photos. So there's the one on the left. There's your main learning stairs. There's our decorative wall. All of our pendant lights, they're hung, ceiling's done, it's painted, and they're working their way down. So think about the construction phase. What we want to do is start at the top and just try to work our way out of the building. So second floor is, if you look at it as 95% completed as we're working our way down to that single pod, and about 80% done right now. And then speak of the second floor, there is a finished classroom. So you can see your daylight, see the large window, the casework, the carpet's in, ceiling grid's done, it's doors are shut, ready to go.
This school was in my house district. This makes me so happy to see. And so good for that community.
Yeah. And so we'll be able, so when there's much like you all were invited, I know we saw David and Susan at the Westwood View, and Jessica and I were able to catch those. The reveal of the LEED certification was fun. So, as we are invited to do tours, you all are included on that.
And that is something we can discuss too, now, later at the end, but we've had our facilities finance meetings before on site. We have done a group tour of these buildings under construction, and that is something that if we want to do again, that more than happy to help facilitate and make that happen for this group. Tomahawk, our building 5 of 5 on this bond. So DLR is our architect. Jay Dunn is the construction manager again. And so chose some of these pictures. Wanted to show you the rendering of the entire site map. So you get to see the parking lot, the layout, where it's going to be, the play area, and some of the features that we'll highlight later on through this build. But Tomahawk is going to be one of our largest. It's just under 80,000 square feet. Again, just started. This process will end. They will start the school year of the fall of 25 to when this building will be completed and opened up. But show you the picture, the bottom right picture here. You're right in the front entryway, right by the main office, looking at the main staircase, the foyer going upstairs, and wanted to show you the elevator, which you can't see, but it is actually the tree and the design features that they use to hide that shaft and incorporate it into the build. And then our progress, so such early phase, I mean, what we've completed is demo of the old building, site work, prep, move the dirt around, and lots of concrete and underground MEP progress, but footings are all in. We got the main retaining wall on that circle drive and the lot in the front, that separation between the lot and the building. But yeah, and building footings. So we just covered the 2 new builds, and then what we'll have is some slides on what we're going to do this summer on our remodels. So what we did through the portion of this bond is we earmarked like $4.6 million for high schools and $3 million for middle schools, and go through, work with the building administration team to do these projects and the needs and tackle some of those items at each one of these locations. But Shawnee Mission West, Insight is the architect on this remodel, and Newkirk Novak will be our construction manager. This project here is going to be a little over 4,000 square feet, a 2-story addition on the north side that you could see from Antioch. So if you think of that right there behind the combo field or that softball field, the addition there off that north side. 2-story weight room, fitness aerobic area on the 2nd floor, weight room on the bottom. And then, if you can see on our next slide, there's a lot of shuffling around with the programs inside to make this happen. So the current the current wrestling room is going to be renovated into the addition as one large weight room. So the design document on the right shows where the squat racks, the weight room, all the equipment's going to be incorporated in what was the wrestling room, which is now the weight room. And then back to the floor plan picture on the left, you see the pink and the orange. That shows you where the old weight room was. That's going to be renovated into the new wrestling room.
And the upstairs could be used for cardio or dance or a variety of different multi-purpose activities, so it's not just a weight room, so.
Yeah.
I have questions, just so you know, from the power lifters and the football guys. 1, when will they be able to use it? And 2, if they're going to have one of the 40-yard and all of that, like the other ones specifically that was from my son. So.
They will.
January.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with the addition, with the addition, the steel work, the footings, the earth excavation, and that's going to be like a 8 to 9 month project. So starting this summer, we'll be able to get in there and do the heavy work, the loud work, try to get that done as much as possible. Anything on the inside of the building, the restroom renovations, the wrestling room, that swap, we'll be able to get that done. But the addition, we're looking at like an October, November completion date. So more than likely, let's be safe, say we'll start the 2nd semester with the addition. Yeah.
So this is our last high school
This is.
project as part of the bond.
Yes.
And now 3 of the 5 have used some of the funding for like weight rooms and fitness additions. Is that right?
Fitness
North,
centers.
south, and west.
Yes.
Yes.
And then, remind me, Northwest Reef, you guys redid.
We
You guys redid your, like.
we redid everything. Yeah, that whole mall area at Northwest.
Mall.
Uh-huh.
And then,
East, we had that large classroom collaboration space on East.
And we also had restrooms at each one of the high schools. So there was some more than others, but we did have restroom work done at each one.
East also had a pretty significant ADA compliance issue.
so they're all a little bit different, but weight and fitness seems to be a little bit too.
Fitness, dance, it all tied in. They're all
Yeah.
kind of different. They're the same, but they're used for different things, so, yeah.
Indian Hills. So Hollis and Miller, architects, we're using J.E. Dunn for the construction manager on this one. So bear with me as I try to explain it to you, but Indian Hills sits at a 45-degree angle. So the south end of the building, which is southeast, but that is where there's this circle drive, drop-off loop. There's already a main sidewalk that rolls in, and it almost hits right in the middle of the building. That is where this addition's going to go. right next to, probably if you're familiar with Hills, there was we installed a new elevator there about 4 or 5 years ago. It's right next to that, in that area. But this is a little under 2,000 square foot addition. And so what the building really needed was a large classroom space that is multifunctional. And so it addressed a lot of needs for large space, large meetings, along with, in the design, they incorporated a lot of small breakout areas as well. So on the next slide, you can see what I tried to attach is the floor plans of some sort. So just looking at it, so the picture on the left is going to be the upper floor of that addition. And just, you see the corridor, just to the bottom side of that is the main office. So that's that main corridor, traffic thoroughfare through East Middle School. Right outside there's your stairs. It's going to take you down into that addition. But before you do, accessing it with that balcony, they're able to put in some small sensory rooms, a small conference room, etc. And then picture on the right shows you what you can do with that room on furniture, have all the movable furniture, be able to rearrange it how they can. And I think with this, a number I remember is like 80, comfortably using the learning stairs at the bottom for seating and all the other seating with the staff, with the small breakout rooms, to be able to have the staff utilize this room for large breakout meetings.
It kind of parallels the addition at East.
It does, right? Yeah. Yeah, so those the big construction projects. As Dr. Galehouse was talking about that Gantt chart we showed earlier, we're always going to have those 5-year plans, those 5-year cycle projects. And what is that, right? And a lot of that we're able to handle these through the summer. And so different ways to call it, but you will refer to us calling these are our summer projects. And it's everything from our HVAC to track resurfacing to tennis courts to asphalt, roofing, tuck pointing. So all those high maintenance needs, and it's the annual budgeted cycle of any type you try to do long range forecasting, right? Where are we at? What's the assessment showing us? And so it's here. And so these are still all bond projects. And these we're going to continue this summer, and we'll be able to do some more next summer as well. But as you can see here, and I think we go back and look at it, phase 4 is what we're calling this summer's work. It was just under $7 million worth of HVAC change out work replacement at all of these locations. And so each one of these pictures I want to show you, like what in the world is a rooftop unit or a chiller. But instead of replacing those chillers, we're able to do a rebuild on them, go through, change the bearings, and get a lot more life out of them without the high-end cost of completely changing them out one for one. But multi-zone units, giant air handlers that are, this picture that's 8 foot, 10 foot tall, and it's going to feed a wing. So you're going to be able to handle 12 to 14 classrooms off of one air handling unit. And so just kind of show you what it is, what we're talking about when rooftop units, multi-zones, air handlers, chillers, boilers. Asphalt improvements. So the district, we try to hit the district every 5 years, roll through it, and you might need a mill and a cap, and it could be in very good shape, and all we need to do is seal coat it to help us with the maintenance for another 3 to 5 years on that lot. So it's broken down that way, it was bid out that way, and so see some of the schools that's going to receive the mill and caps, you see some of the schools that's going to get seal coat only, and then some of the additional work that we need to do. And so with this on that third line, the third bullet point is the CAA parking lot expansion project. So much needed addition here, and that will take place again this summer, and it's about approximately 55 additional parking stalls here on the southeast side of the building. Roofing upgrades, what we do every year too, every summer. It tends to be ongoing more and more, but this is just some snippets of what we have digitally for our roofing assessments district-wide. The colors do mean something. It tells you what type of roof it is, how old the roof is, what year it's projected to be out of warranty, and help us budget and plan for the future of what year, how much money needs to be allocated for district-wide roof assessment plan. So just this year, you see it, what fell on our plate was the 3 high schools. Unfortunately, they were extremely large areas at those 3 high schools. But as you see at Shawnee Mission North, hopefully we can get another 100 years out of that roof as we did on this one. So finally have to get to the point of replacing that clay tile on the original side there on that east end. Playground upgrades, replacements, tear out rebuilds. This is the final summer. This will wrap up our playground, the inclusive elements that we are adding to them. And we were able to do it in 4 years. And we even were added Shawnee to our list. As we talked earlier, was built, but that building's probably 8 years old now. Chose to keep the equipment in place, but just to replace the mulch and add the turf and add some inclusive elements in there with it to get that playground along with all the other 34 elementaries.
And this is our final slide here, final step, the action team update. Last night was our final meeting with our action team for facilities, and facilities is strategy 6 of the strategic plan. So we've had about 30 team members on that, and we have been meeting for the past month in the evening and feel like we're in a good place. The neat thing about the information I'm going to share with you is that it had all 30 members, and it was a unanimous agreement on each one of the action steps, strategy, and the actual results. So we agreed that we will strategically focus resources to support state-of-the-art facilities to accomplish our beliefs, mission, and objectives. And actually, the first action plan, one of 2, is that a strategic bond plan that builds community connections through sustainable, state-of-the-art educational environments and facilities that serve as hubs for collaboration, engagement, and shared experiences. We also have a variety of action steps for that. And when I say trying to get 30 people to unanimously agree on something is a bit of a monumental task. So a variety of different questions, comments, just words, several English teachers in there. And so lots of, you get to know each other quite well by the time that's done to get 30 people to agree. And that's not even maybe, that's not even side thumbs. They've got to be up. So action plan 2, the result was a projected cycle of building maintenance, enhancements, and future developments that meet the financial resources of the district to serve our students, staff, and community. We have cost analysis. We also have action steps again with that, and these will depend upon if and or when the next bond will pass and what year that would go and the needs of the district and how much money that would be and all the steps that we would go through starting that process over again. So at that point in time, if there are any questions about facilities? Oh yes, from this information here that we just did last night does go to the steering committee, and from the steering committee they can send it back. It's kind of like government, they can send it back to committee where we would have to make adjustments, necessary changes. If the steering committee agrees with what we proposed here in facilities, it would then go to the superintendent for a recommendation to the Board of Education. And so then the process would be underway. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Thank you.
And so we have one member of the steering committee here today, among the board, and Dr. Schumacher. Is anyone else on the steering committee? The 2 of you are.
That's hot off the press info.
Yes,
That's
it is.
That's kind of exciting. It's very exciting.
I think it's 24 hours old.
I like that action step number 1 in particular, so it highlights the community connected piece. I think that's something we've gotten especially good at doing over the last 5 years with our newest round of the bond project, is not just coming in and being like, congratulations, here's a new building and this is what it's going to look like, but really engaging neighborhood residents and parents and teachers.
So when you mention that, the action steps are very important to engage ongoing occupancy feedback and needs assessment, as well as generate and maintain ongoing community partnerships to leverage those relationships and not only generate them, but maintain them throughout the bond process and look at ways of getting more feedback and how we can better serve the community.
I'll go. So you've done a lot. So what have you learned? What have you said, this was well, this was not so well? 'Cause I know those things pop up.
I'm retired. Force me to retire.
You two don't care. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
would add that this bond has been exceptionally challenging due to COVID and budgets and just skyrocketing of prices and supply. And not only that, but getting supplies and materials. It's created issues in our timelines, but kudos to Tyler and Russ for just being persistent and working with our builders and Dr. Gilhouse too. It's been a challenge, but I feel really good about where we've landed. Wasn't easy getting here, but we learned a lot in this bond, probably more than any ever a bond that existed.
Could I ask, Russ, could you speak a little bit to that connection between the bond, our AAA rating, the capacity to earn interest, and then how those funds have been used in the recent bond and past bonds? I think it's important to kind of build that connection between sound finance and our capacity to maximize every dollar in the bond.
On that one slide, there was a term called premium, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but in the bond world, you can go up to 10% additional, and that's called a premium. And we market our bonds to generate that 10% premium, so you do have to pay it back, so that would work into the debt schedule, but it does give these guys extra money to handle those rising costs. So it worked out pretty well that we generated $25.2 million in premium off just the sell of bonds. And part of that reason is, again, our AAA rating. So that's why it's so important that we keep our balances. And it's just not one-year balances, it's a trend. So when Moody's is who does our analysis of our bonds, that they look at revenue trends and fund balance trends. And they want to see them going up. They don't want to see them going down, et cetera. And that feeds into the AAA, that feeds into getting the premium, the low interest rates, et cetera. And then the other thing that we've been able to do, because the interest rates are so high right now, we're very restricted on what we can invest in. Basically CDs, T-bills, and that's about it. And so we're getting 5 to 5.5%, which is, what's that? We're probably averaging 3.5% on the bond debt. And we're bringing in 5 to 5.5%. So we might generate $7 million off of just interest alone.
Don't factor that into the next bond.
Yeah. It's,
That may not ever happen again.
It wasn't factored in this one.
Well, I know. It may not happen again for a while.
If I can, I'd like to just congratulate you guys and Dr. Hubbard, because from the beginning with COVID and what went on with our budgets, and you guys were like the people in those machines where the things are flying around, but you guys had nets and you guys were proactive with the work that was done, where there's been so much like instability, what's going on, just overnight sessions, that I think if there's anything that they've learned or anything, it's like them being proactive, like being very conservative and cautious, but like, okay, looking to the future the way they has been phenomenal. Instead of trying to play catch up, and you guys really took account, because I don't think many people realize the two buckets and then the one bucket, and then you have all of the outside factors just going everywhere that you have to account for that you can't control. And you guys just really kept it with the steering committee. I was on the initial steering committee, one of them when it first started, and really looking from what that was to now in the second steering committee, you guys have really laid out everything that was discussed in those sessions to now, and now we're in the second phase of what's going on and already looking, okay, when we start going to another bond, what are we looking at? I just really want to congratulate you guys, because you guys did really, really well, because there's a lot of work that goes into this, and I have a small business. I couldn't imagine all of the factors and buckets and nets and everything going on that you have to think about. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you, Angie. I'm also really proud of this bond compared to future for previous bonds. And kudos to our board for this and just processes that we've put in place. But this is the most inclusive bond that we've had, and I mean inclusive in lots of different ways. Like Ms. Hembry mentioned that communities got to design the school. I mean, for example, you're at Crestview, right? And that was it was a design build, boom, here's your school, where shortly after that, we really started engaging parent committees and students and saying, what do you like about this process? Or, what do you want? Like, they're all so very different. Like, Pawnee wanted really warm colors. Other schools wanted bright colors. And so they really got to put a stamp on those buildings, as well as the middle school and high school design. They really got to tell us what was important in their school, what they needed, what they wanted the graphics to look like. When I say inclusive, the inclusive playgrounds, to my knowledge, we're the only school district, probably even in the state of Kansas and multiple states around us, that have every single elementary school that has an inclusive playground. So really proud of that work as well. And there's just other features, the collaborative furniture in every high school and middle school, that's a big feat to take on. It wasn't an easy task, but we pulled it off. So.
David, one thing I reflect on a lot, your question is a good one about like what we learned, is when we went for this bond, it was January of 2021, which really put yourself back in that like frame of mind, what was happening in the world in January 2021, and going to this community and asking for a bond increase when there's a massive pandemic raging, when many people's kids aren't even in school. Like at that point in time, it felt like almost like a Hail Mary pass. Like it felt like you were just like, oh gosh, I hope this works, because there was so much happening in the world. And the fact that we had our community still support this bond, I think spoke volumes. And at that point in time, we were actually deciding between like 3 levels of amount. And we decided on the sort of middle of the road amount. In retrospect, we should have gone for the higher one. I'm like, wow, had we known that people were going to support it in such numbers, we should have gone for more. So, and I hope that as we think about a future bond, the level of like community engagement and transparency that we've used over the last 5 years means we have more of a chance to kind of make a Hail Mary pass that doesn't feel like a Hail Mary pass, because I think the team's done such a phenomenal job at like not just producing fantastic buildings, which way to go, but also like doing so with a high level of transparency. Like if you ever wanted to totally geek out and know exactly what happened which week on which building, it's actually out there on our website. Like you could be that person who wants to watch week by week, like what's happening with the footing. I didn't even know what that was, but you could watch what's happening with the footing. Like I think that transparency really engenders a lot of confidence from our community and sets us up well for like if we have to go out, when we have to go ask for more money, that they'll feel confident that it's worth investing in, because it is.
And I don't expect you to answer here in front of, but, are we tracking, all right, these are the builders that did a good job. These are the architects that we really like to work with, or, for a future, because, you won't be here, and, Joe, you won't be around to be able to rely upon the knowledge. Some will, but hopefully we're keeping track of, all right, this builder did a good job. These things are, we're 4 years in and this thing's falling apart, or 10 years in, because we want them to last, so that we're not, redoing a lot in a few years. I know you said there were some things you learned about, probably wasn't big enough, but you didn't anticipate some stuff, and it's just
We're
hard to know.
absolutely tracking those things. Tyler does a really nice job at working with our contractors. Sometimes you just get a bad bid package, right? And it is what it is, and we chalk it up to it is what it is. I mean, when you're doing this much work, every once in a while you're going to get, it's not so much the builder, it's the people subbing those jobs, right? It might be the sheetrock guys, or it might be the HVAC contractor, but yes, and there are people that we aren't going to accept a bid from, and we always try to take the lowest bid. There are a few occasions where that's not the case, but they're really very rare. But we also aren't going to take a package that it's such a low ball that we have, there's
Right.
questions.
Well, I think the
right?
key phrase is
Yeah.
the lowest qualified bid. And, but yeah, I mean, we're always learning. We learn from the last bond, implement those ideas into this bond. And hopefully, if we have another bond, we're going to take experiences from the ones that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of the last 10 years, and incorporate all into the next one. And so you're always learning, you're always improving.
Any other questions? All right, I think we might have 5 minutes to spare. Our next meeting is August 29th. Thank you all for being here. If you have, feel free to shoot me an email or Jessica an email if you have any questions. Yes, did you?
I don't have a question, but I would like to just say thank you for all the work that went into presenting everything at this level and with the level of transparency. As you said, it builds trust, and I just want to say thank you, having been in your shoes, Russ. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you to you and your team, and also to you and yours, too. Yeah, all that in transition, so thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.